This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FI Investment Group, and your host of Washington Current Review, where we interview leading voices from business and politics to impact you, the viewer. Today, our guest is Greet Van Brandt. Thank you very much for coming to our show.
Frank, I thank you.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about yourself. You are from Seagull Foundation.
That's
so
right,
tell me a little bit about Seagull Foundation. What's its mission? What's its goal? What does it do? And what has it achieved so far?
Okay.
I guess this is a loaded question.
Yes, the Segal Foundation was founded by Eda and Suri Segal. He's an Indian American who made his career, a very brilliant career in the seed business.
In seed?
Seeds, like agriculture seeds, with Pioneer Seeds.
And he's located in the United States?
He's located in the United States, and 25 years ago, he left Pioneer Seeds that was acquired by DuPont. He reached almost the top, decided to develop a seed company in India to provide the farmers with much better seed than they had. He was very successful, and 10 years later, Hoechst acquired that seed business because Hoechst had a big agriculture business. And the wealth that he accumulated went to a large extent to this foundation in order to give back to India. I know that you give back to America, and that's a great thing. He thought that India also needed it. He gives back to issues in America too, but mostly he's focused on India. Particularly, he picked an area about 1 to 3 hours outside Delhi, Gurgaon. In Haryana, because...
This is where he's from?
No, he's not. He actually grew up as a child in West Punjab, and during the separation he was tossed on an overloaded train and sent without his parents just across the border. And I mean, it's a long story. It's actually recounted in his book, Seeds of Change.
Seeds of Change.
Seeds of Change. That just came out,
so this is the lives and the work of Suri and Eda Segal.
Right.
Okay, so this is the book which tells the story of the Segal Foundation chairman and CEO.
Right. So from early childhood.
What a country is this that we get a tax exempt status in this country and helping people in India, right?
Yes.
This is a great country in the world.
It is a great country. It's extremely generous. And,
very generous country.
Both to people who come here and also to people outside. Often the United States gets a lot of flack, but I'm Flemish, so Dutch-speaking Belgian, and we have a saying, high trees catch a lot of wind. If you do a lot of good, you get a lot of flack for it. So as Americans might say, no good deed goes unpunished. But generally it's a great country. Like every country makes a few mistakes, but I think as a whole it's a fantastic country.
So great, water and sanitation is the key ingredient of success in a province like Rajasthan, which is very, very important there. And how did the Segal Foundation work with them in this area? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, we work with the communities to, first of all, point out that they're sucking the groundwater dry, mostly with irrigation. So the two go hand in hand, and that's why we work in both water and agriculture. We have to urgently replenish the aquifers, the groundwater lakes, the underground lakes essentially, and also collect water during the monsoons as much as possible.
And where do you store them?
Well, for instance,
in silos?
In silos in schools, because they have large flat roofs, so we can capture the rainwater and move it into the silos, and part of it is filtered for drinking water. The rest could be for toilets, sanitation, and even to grow some trees here and there, because that offers shades to the kids. And because they have water in school, especially the girls, we also build girl toilets, they are more attracted to stay in school, because if they get
Makes
thirsty,
a lot of sense.
They just run home and they don't come back. So indirectly we even work in education, but that is not our main focus. Other people are doing that. In terms of massive volume of water, we also during the monsoons, when the water runs down the hills, we stop it with what we call check dams. It's a dam that temporarily stops the water. So you build a big lake for 24, 48 hours in a porous area, and the water seeps into the ground, back into the aquifer, and the groundwater levels increase and spread all around the area so that people who have wells and pumps can access more water. One of the problems with declining water levels in the aquifer is that you get a Dead Sea effect. More salts, more minerals in the water, higher concentrations, and so the water is undrinkable and is even toxic for the crops when you irrigate. So we have to work on all these things to really get things back up to speed.
Well, those are the very important thing to do to uplift the society.
Right.
And also they can have a basic necessity of their life, which is the water and sanitation.
Yes.
Prime Minister Modi is very much into sanitation these
Yes.
days, and I'm sure you subscribe to the nation what he's doing, especially having the toilets and things like that in the school, so the kids can go to school and stay there. As you said,
Very important.
It's very important. It's a basic necessity of the
Yes.
life. Woman empowerment, as I understand, is a very important to the Seagull Foundation.
Yes.
Okay, so and especially in the villages.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about and shed some light and bright light, if you can, on this woman's empowerment.
In the villages where we work, and I guess in most villages in India, the women are kept locked up unless when they have to do hard labor in the fields and carry the water miles away. So
they carry the waters
on their head,
on their head and the
usually,
shoulder,
and little girls too. So that also keeps girls out of school. If we provide water closer to
so they can go to
their
school.
home, then the girls can go to school, and the women have more time to do things. But very important in this, and this is not just India. In all developing countries in the world,
In Africa?
in Africa, in Central America, in the
Central
poor
America.
countries, similar situations existed where the men had all title to the land, all possessions, whatever little it was,
Women
and the women
have no voice.
had no voice. And the thing is, what we've learned is that women are very eager and very capable to learn agriculture, even being good sarpanches, little mayors of their villages. Once we instill that confidence in them, and whereas the men, the husbands, often are very opposed in the beginning that women would have a role. Once the husband sees that their women shine as public people in the village who help others, then they become proud. They also see that they can generate income either through micro enterprise,
Sure.
or
Microfinance.
So
So they can become an entrepreneur, a small business owner.
exactly. And the
So
nice
this way
thing
they can
about-
provide for their family.
And not only that, the men.
They can create jobs.
They can create jobs.
Grow economy.
They can instill education in their children because now they see what confidence building and capacity building means. When a woman has some money or does something, she tends to do it for her entire family, her husband and her kids. Often what we see in the villages is that men, when they have an extra dime, they don't spend it right. It doesn't necessarily go to education or to the benefit of the entire family. So that is a shift that we are seeing. And whereas in the beginning, one might be a little bit timid about it because what are the men going to say? What we find is that once they're over that little hump in the beginning, the husbands become very proud and other husbands start encouraging their wives to take a different role.
So
It's
is
not
that a
so-
sustainable effect?
That is a very sustainable thing. Because once you have come to that, I mean, we've seen it in this country
Sure,
too. you know,
sure. We're going back to many years
yeah,
ago, but that's probably
yeah.
true. My question is, who funds all this work that you're doing in villages?
Well, as I said, the Segals have been funding most of the work for the past 15 years because.
So how large is the foundation?
Um,
If you may want to share, if you don't want to share, that's fine.
Yeah, I
Several
don't think
million
there's a
dollar?
public- No, I would say it's at least 50
$50
million
million.
dollars. But the average rate that I've been funding has been about $2 billion a year. But we've had,
That's a fairly large contribution.
especially in the villages in
Yeah,
India,
it
it goes
is a
a
large
long way. And the important thing is not that we just spend the money, but that we engage the villagers so that we work
So
alongside
you
with them.
empower them to do the work as well.
That's right.
So it's a shared interest and shared goals.
That's
with
right.
a shared opportunity.
Right, and they also have to fund part of it, even a small part, but they have to contribute if we build a dam, sweat labor, if we build a water
So you're creating a
harvesting
jobs
system.
in a sense also. And
we also-
also showing them the tools and technology and
Right.
so that they can achieve
Right.
success in
They-
doing so.
Yeah, there's no use in building something that they don't take possession of themselves because then it goes like many development projects around the world in poor countries. A year later, it's a tomb. It doesn't function anymore. So they have to take pride and make it their own. So the money that we spend is leveraged very highly by working with villagers, with village institutions. That's the other aspect, that's the capacity building of what we do, is that we train the little, village institutions like health and sanitation committees, the school committees that were totally inactive, that existed by law but were inactive. So by doing that, the villagers learn how to get resources from the government.
Okay. So they harness those resources, the government resources as well.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So give me some success story of your foundation.
One
that made a difference.
Yeah. Well, one that I love is.
I'm sure you have made a lot of difference.
Yes. We trained about 3,000 women farmers in Rajasthan recently in soil sampling. These farmers have very little plots of land and they're very poor, but they overspend on fertilizer because they just buy whatever fertilizer and they don't know what the soil needs.
Okay.
So by teaching them about soil sampling and have the soil analyzed, we know exactly what's to optimize the fertilizer. And whilst doing that, training these women, as I told you the story before, they become very confident and they become public persons, and the women love to teach each other.
Okay.
Things which the men don't necessarily do. So it uplifts the yield, the profit on the land, etc. So that's one great example.
So agricultural productivity.
Agricultural productivity is
that's what
is
you're doing.
One.
You have something they want to show to the audience?
Sure. I mean, we of course have a brochure. Obviously, women and kids are always in our pictures.
I love the way it says that together we empower rural India.
Right.
What a best way to describe the work you do.
Right. Thank
now,
you.
you also involved in governance and citizen participation.
Yes.
And why isn't it the government's role to do that? What is your role and responsibility?
Well, people who know India and many other developing areas in the world know, especially in India, there's some wonderful programs. There's Manrega, there to provide paid labor to poor rural families. There's the midday school lunches that should be free. There's many other things. The problem is that between Delhi and the villages, 80% of the money never reaches
because of the corruption?
There's corruption, there is inefficiency, there is all sorts of things. By making the villagers aware of their rights and treat them how they can obtain what they need. For instance, in many villages you have the public distribution systems of wheat. Poor families get allotments of wheat from the government. Well, often these guys just sell it on the market and write out the card that it's been given. So now the villagers know that they're entitled to something, and they can go and claim. And if the guy doesn't,
do they speak up and do they talk to their, the people who are politicians, elected officials, to say that this is the wrong thing to do?
Yes. So that it's a grassroots up movement where people.
That's very well described. Grassroots movement.
That's right. So they get the voice. And it's a little bit like the barking dog. If you have a barking dog in your house and the robber comes to your house, he says, well, maybe I'll try next door. But if all the poor people in India start, claiming, and you can discuss whether or not these entitlement programs are ideal or not, but if they're there, the money should go to the poor for whom they're destined and not, to sticky hands in between.
Now, how do you propagate your message to the wider audience in the villages? You have a community radio stations and things like that?
Right.
And to the newspapers and so on and so forth? This is how you propagate your message?
Well, obviously, the radio station is important because, like you and I are sitting here, with one communication, we reach 183 villages, and more people are listening to it. We also take questions, so that we try to make this interactive
and then you give them the answer.
And of course, we focus on the programs that we work on: water, agriculture, governance, capacity building, but also folklore, local music, so that people really become engaged
So
in
it's a
what goes on in their-
participatory.
Exactly.
It's a two-way dialogue.
It's a two-way dialogue, and it's a fantastic.
It's a listening
way.
and learning.
Listening and learning, and we learn too, because through the questions that they give us, we know what's really
So that's
important
the
to them.
input they provide you to do for you to do better.
Right. Of course, most of our communication goes through the 100 field workers that we have working in the villages all over every day. They're out there doing training sessions, getting feedback, helping them with micro planning. For instance, if you want to, the villages don't know how they have to build soak pits or a clean street or
Sure,
pave.
sure.
So we help them the micro planning, where you should go in order to get funding from the government, etc.
So these are the things which you're doing it to have an impact on the society and the impact on the villages also.
Yes.
And that's a wonderful
Yes.
thing to do. Now, before I wrap up this
Yes.
interview, you have any final thoughts about your foundation?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we have been funding all the work ourselves, or most of it. Recently, we have been getting funding from Coca-Cola Foundation
Okay.
and from Mosaic Fertilizer Company,
Okay.
which used to be Cargill Fertilizer.
Okay.
And we've won quite a few awards from government, from Fitchi, CII, the Confederation of Indian Industries, USAID. So we think it's now time to also get funding from the NRI.
And the individual NRI, who
or
has the
foundations,
capacity to give.
to give, and so they
So
can
that's
go
that's
online.
what you want audience to know.
That's right. So they can go to www.smsfoundation.org, and there's a donate button, etc., where you can find also how you can donate from the United States. We are in the United States a 501c3.
So it's a tax exempt by IRS.
Tax exempt.
Well, that's a very nice thing to do for the people. So thank you very much for coming over here. I appreciated that very much, and I wish you good luck as you undertake this journey.
Yeah, it's a long journey, but it's a very rewarding one.
It is a rewarding journey.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. So this is Frank Islam wishing you a great week. Thank you for watching.